Okay, hi everyone. This is Rachel Red, and I'm coming at you from my living room with the yoga flow. I wanted to look at some yoga philosophy today. So there's these concepts called the yamas, and they're basically ways of being in the world. And one of them is called Asteya. It's loosely translated as non-stealing or non-coveting, and there's ways we can take that onto our mat. So we'll get started and we'll practice being in the flow of giving and receiving, of being generous. And it's maybe so obvious, this concept of non-stealing, that we overlook it, right? Obviously, duh, don't take things that aren't yours. Um, but it gets more interesting when it's not things that are being stolen, right? But time or thoughts or maybe poses. So what I invite you to do on your mat, what is offered in this class, may not be right for you. Everything is not yours to practice, so you get to pick and choose what to take and leave behind the parts that don't help you grow. So if I invite you into a pose and it's just a no-go, then skip it, and you'll be practicing this philosophical concept of Asteya. So we'll get started on our backs. You can find your way to a comfortable seat. You might want some blocks handy, and if you don't have blocks, then maybe like a water bottle, or I like to use a empty coffee container, but they're not needed. So we'll just ease onto our backs. Very good. And whichever way you need to face to see the camera, if you need to flip around at any point in the practice, that's okay. We'll just work with the space that we have. So we'll start with bent knees. Bring the knees together, the heels wide apart, hands towards the direction of the feet. And turn your attention to the fact that you're on your mat right now. We'll be mindfully laying here. Notice any sensations that you brought with you, any prevailing emotions or moods. Take a quick scan of your body, starting at the top of your head, moving all the way down the length of your body, your torso, arms, hips, legs, through the bottoms of your feet. And pause anywhere that captures your attention. So any place that has a sensation, whether it feels really good or it feels a little tight, whatever it may be. And begin to turn your awareness to your breath. There's no need to change it or adjust it. Just simply notice the breath that you brought with you to your mat. Good. And notice how paying attention to your breath might already begin to change it, the cadence, the depth, the length. Just be aware of the fact that you're breathing. So we'll begin introducing movement into this practice. So take your heels together, heels and toes together, bring them pretty close to your sit bones, palms flat on the mat. And then use an inhale to lift just your tailbone off the mat. And then exhale, lower it back down. Use an inhale to lift the tailbone, and exhale, lower. We're just warming up the low back, massaging the low back. This time, inhale, maybe lift the hips a little higher than the last time. And exhale, slowly lower. Link the breath with the movement. You can go at your own pace, lifting and lowering the hips. It might feel good to stay for a breath with your hips lifted towards the sky. And when you're ready, we'll use an exhale to lower the tailbone all the way back down to the mat. We'll tuck the knees in towards the chest. Give yourself a hug. Thank yourself for showing up to your practice. Rock side to side. Good. We'll plant the feet flat on the mat once more. Arms out to the sides. Fill up on an inhale. And as you exhale, let the knees find their way over to the right. We're just taking a gentle twist. And if your mind is doing what the mind does, if it's thinking a lot of thoughts, bring it back to the breath. Let it settle on the inhales and exhales. On your next in-breath, raise the knees back up to center. And we'll spend a full round of breath here, evening out the pelvis, the sacrum. And when you're ready, we'll expand through the ribs with an inhale and then exhale the knees to the opposite side. Notice if it feels better to have your eyes open or maybe flutter them closed. It's up to you. Stay with the breath. Good. Inhale the knees back to center. This time lift the bottoms of your feet flat to the sky. Arms can come down to your sides. We're in a variation of candlestick. So we're just stretching out the backs of the legs, straightening one foot or one leg and then the other. Gently opening up the muscles in the backs of the legs. Maybe circle your ankles. Good, and then we'll bend at the knees, bring the knees in towards the armpits, take the arms in between the legs, and then grab the outer edges of the feet. We'll take happy baby. This is good for the inner thighs, the hip area. But if this is a lot, if this is too much on the beginning part of a practice, that's okay. You can just keep your legs lifted and stretch through the backs of your legs. Let your body guide the way. Find the version of stretch that is right for your body with no forcing, no taking. Just take the stretch that is yours. Good. And then when you're satisfied, we'll let the feet find their way back to the mat. Good. And then choose how you want to make your way to a seat. You can take the hands behind the legs and rock yourself up. You can roll onto your favorite side. It's up to you. And find a comfortable seat. Sometimes it's nice to sit on a block or a pillow. We'll take a few breaths here, finding center. So finding the length in your spine. Imagine you're wearing a crown on your head and you're holding it up as high as you can. And it's a gentle lengthening. It's not a lot of effort. We're just inviting the spine to sit up a little taller, letting the shoulders relax down the back, let the jaw relax in the face. Relax the muscles behind the ears and along the scalp. Soften the space between your eyebrows. And in this relaxed state, bring your attention back to your breath, your natural breath. Introduce a count without changing it. Notice how many counts are your inhale and how many counts are the exhale. It doesn't matter what the number is, just notice the length, the proportion of in and out. We're coming back to that giving and receiving with our very breath, Asteya. And once you've got a good sense of what's happening with your breath, introduce a hum on the exhale. And it might sound a little funny, that's okay. We'll breathe in, and then as you breathe out, we'll just hum. A couple breaths like that, humming on the exhale. Notice what's happened to the length of the exhale when you add the hum. Notice what happens to your capacity to give on the exhale when you take what you need on the inhale. Taking all that you need, all of what's yours, but no more. And then on your exhales, feeling the fullest expression of all that you have to give when it's from a place of being nourished. It's not a way of depleting yourself or giving. It's about being in balance with giving and receiving. It's about generosity from a space of overflow. And we'll try this again, and inhale, lift the arms overhead. And then as you exhale, let the arms make their way back down to the mat. We'll inhale the arms overhead. And at your own pace, exhale, let them make their way back down to the mat. We'll inhale again. And on your next exhale, try the hum. And see if you can match the movement with the length of the breath. And notice what happens to the length when you add the hum. Good. So we have this breath. I learned it from a teacher named Ashley Zuberi. It was not mine, I'm borrowing it. And we have this breath, we have our practice to connect with this concept of Asteya. So from this seated position, we'll transition now into table pose. So hands and knees. Take a moment to press down through your fingertips, press through the shins. Find a neutral spine. And then as you inhale, lift through the tailbone, open the front of the body, feel the heart cascade through the portal of the arms. And then as you exhale, tuck the tailbone under, arch through the back. Inhale, lift the tailbone, open the front of the body, widen the collarbone. And then exhale, round in. We'll move at your own pace. So let the breath guide the movement. And you should color in your experience or invite yourself to color in with movements to the side, maybe back and forth. We're being generous to all of the muscles and ligaments that support the spine, right? So it's the multifidus muscles, the muscles that keep the pelvis stable. We're just moving and stretching in a way that feels good for you. Good, and then we'll make our way to a neutral spine. So a flat back, flat-ish, keeping the natural curves in the low back. Bring your elbows down to where your palms are. So we're making our way to a mini down dog, a puppy pose. You can walk your knees back, send your hips tall and your heart towards your knees. So you're stretching through the chest, the arms, the shoulders. You might rest your forehead on the mat. And find some nice relaxing in breaths and out breaths. Good, and then on your next inhale, lift your torso back over your arms and then lower your belly onto the mat. So we're in a Sphinx pose. This is a gentle heart opener itself. And what we're doing here is taking the elbows beneath the shoulders. And if you're not sure how far apart your elbows should be from one another, you can cross at the arms and your fingertips should touch the opposite elbow. That's about how close they should be. Nice. And then let your forearms make the number 11, all 10 fingers pointing forward. Tops of the feet can press down into the mat. Scoop your tailbone under. And then engage your inner tummy. So take it towards the spine and up. That'll support your low back if this feels a little crunchy. And if this just isn't working for your low back, you can soften it by taking the palms out. It takes the curve into a different part of your back. So from wherever you are, pull the elbows back towards the ribs and imagine you're trying to like pull the mat under you. It's an isometric movement, but it opens the chest, the ribs, the sternum. Big breath. On an exhale, lower your forehead to the mat. Let your hands come underneath your shoulders. Tops of the feet still flat on the mat. We'll engage the low body by pushing the toes into the mat, the shins, the thighs, the pelvis, around the tailbone under. And then bring the shoulders together on your back, lower them towards your hips, and let the chest and the forehead come a few inches off the mat. Keep your low belly pulled in. strengthening the back muscles. Good, and then exhale, lower your forehead back down to the mat. Let all the muscular effort go. We'll take a breath here, relaxing. And we'll set up to do that again. So place the forehead on the mat, push the low body into the ground, root down through the feet, the shins, thighs, hips, and then engage your back muscles so that your chest and forehead come off the mat. You might lift your palms just to make sure the hands aren't pushing yourself up, that it's all coming from your back. Imagine taking the shoulders in the direction of the feet. One more big breath here. Good, and then relax. We'll lower back down, release all the muscles. We're giving and receiving. Take the rest when you need it. Take pauses in between moments of effort. Good, we'll try that again. We'll put the forehead flat on the mat. Let the hands come behind the tailbone or the tush. Interlace the fingers. Push down with the low body, the feet, the legs, and then draw your knuckles towards your feet. So we're stretching through the chest. Gaze is straight down at the mat to keep the neck in line with the rest of the spine. We're in a locust variation. Use your breath as your guide. If you lose connection with your breath, you can choose a different variation. Take only the poses that help you grow. And then on an exhale, we'll lower the chest, the forehead back down to the mat, release the hands. We'll spend a few breaths here, just laying flat on the ground. When you're ready, place the hands, lift the torso, send your hips to your heels. We'll take a child's pose or another puppy pose, your choice. Good, we're stretching through the low back, we're stretching the upper back here. When you're ready, use an inhale to come into hero pose. So you're sitting back on your feet. And we'll set ourselves up for camel. This is another heart opening posture. A blankie can be really nice to support underneath the knees. If you don't have a blanket, you can also fold your mat, create a little extra support. We'll make our way to a kneeling posture. I'm going to use a blanket. Optional, of course, so you do what's best for you. And like we did in table, we're going to push down through the shins. Take a moment and maybe let your hands come onto the mat. Let your knees be directly below the hips. So they're pretty close together, but not touching. Good, and then we'll come back to kneeling. I'm going to have a block ready. And this is a nice heart opener. It's one that has a lot of levels that you can build on. So take the one that is best for you and stop when it doesn't help you anymore. So we're pushing down into the shins. We'll take several breaths to just get set up, and we'll ease into this one. So pull the knees together, the thighs together. I like to use a block between my inner thighs just to have that reminder to pull the knees together. That keeps the low back safe. If you don't have a block, sometimes a water bottle can be nice there. So keep the glutes relaxed, but pull the hip points up. So we're engaging the belly, pull the inner belly back and up. Engage the pelvic floor. Tuck the tailbone down, so you're rooting down through the ground. Imagine you're connected through a cord right to the core of the earth. Really supported in the low body, just like we were on our bellies. And where we'll go next is we'll place the hands on the bony part of the low back. So the thumbs will go right on that spot. And then we'll take the shoulders up together and back down. We're looping the shoulders. And then maybe lift the chin. So already we're in a variation of camel. This is a heart opener. This is working for you. You can stay here. You might also take your hands towards your chest, the palms together, thumbs on your sternum, and then lift your heart up into your thumbs, and then begin to lean back. So we're not making a ramp. We're not just totally leaning back like this. We're letting the heart go up and over. So the bend is in the thoracic spine. The low body is still very much engaged. And then to come out of it, we'll take an in-breath, tuck the chin to the chest, and come back to that kneeling posture. We'll lower down to hero's pose. So sit back on the heels. Take a breath here. That was a big movement. And we'll just gently, gently twist from one side to the other. Turn your gaze side to side as well. Gently twisting the spine after that big movement, a big bend in a way we probably don't normally move. And then finally create some space between your knees, lower your chest to the ground for child's pose. We'll stretch out that low back. And be generous with yourself. Take only the postures that belong to you. Take all the rest you need here in this child's pose. Good, and then use an inhale to rise back up to heroes. And we'll find our way to kneeling once more. So I'm offering different tools. I'm giving you the whole tool belt, and you decide which ones are the ones that you want to work with today. So we'll set up the low body, again, push down into the shins. It's up to you that your toes can be, the tops of your feet can be flat on the mat, or you can curl your toes under. Sometimes that's helpful for folks. Different versions, you get to choose which one to work with. Hug the inner thighs together, isometrically pull the thighs towards one another. Ground the tailbone down into the ground. Engage your core. The more you can engage your low belly, the more supported your lumbar spine is when we begin to bend. And so we did a couple variations already. We did the hands on the hips. We did the hands at the heart. You can also take your thumbs, hook them underneath your armpits like suspenders, and then pull your chest up as you begin to lean back. And for years, I have kept my hands on my hips. It can be really nice, but just ease into it and do what's best for you. Don't push it. Don't take anything that doesn't feel right for you. And if this feels all right, you might inhale your one arm up, your favorite arm, doesn't matter which one. And begin to open through the side of the body. You can exhale that arm, maybe lift the opposite arm. Your gaze might be ahead of you. It might be up at the sky. Good. And then when you're ready, tuck the chin into your chest. Come back up to that regular kneeling posture. Inhale for length in your spine. Exhale the hips to the heels, so we're taking hero's pose. Maybe a twist or two to each side. Just letting all the parts of the back kind of reset, so we're not going from a back bend to a forward fold in child's pose. We're taking a couple movements side to side, and then when you're ready, move into child. Your fingertips might be extended long overhead. They might be in the direction of your feet. It's up to you. So on an inhale, raise your torso back up to hero's pose. We'll make our way to kneeling once more. Find the knees about hips distance apart. And this will be our third expression of this. So maybe this is yours with the hands on the hips, shoulders back, gaze up. You might try any variation of all the different options we've walked through. Another option to explore is taking the hands to the heels. And this is where lifting onto the toes can be helpful. Engage the core, tuck the tailbone under, pull the knees towards one another. And then when you're ready to come out of it, tuck your chin towards your chest. Take your hands back onto your hips if they're not there already. And then ease your way into hero pose. Several breaths here, moving gently and slowly. And then twist from one side to another. Turn your head so your neck is getting a gentle twist as well. No need to force it. There's no need to push yourself. Just meet your body where you're at today. And then finally, we'll make our way to child's pose. And find your breath here. Good, we'll use an inhale to rise back up to a table. Come down onto your hips, and we'll extend the feet long in front of us. We're in Dandasana. And we'll take several breaths to get acclimated here. So pull the toes back towards the knees. Keep a soft bend in your knees so we don't overextend them. Root down through your sit bones and then inhale, lift through the top of your head. Your hands can go right alongside your hips. Inhale nice and tall, and then as you exhale, keep a nice straight back, hinge at the hips, lean forward. And let the movement stop when the breath stops. So it might take several breaths to find the expression that is yours, the one that belongs to you. And then once you're there, you can round your back and let this be passive. It doesn't matter where your hands land, but let them settle somewhere. And notice what happens when you tilt your head up or tuck your chin into your chest. Notice what happens in your back if you feel a stretch in different parts of your back. There's a lot of different dials you can use to turn up the intensity or turn it down. You can lift and lower your chin. You can bend your knees more or less, but always keep a gentle bend in the knees. You can play with the placement of your hands. They might be at your shins. They might be around your feet. They might be flat on the mat. Yeah, but don't worry about following along exactly, and see if you can find the version that serves you best. And when you're ready, we'll use a slow inhale to begin rising back up. If you run out of inhale, pause. So let the movement stop with the breath. And eventually we'll find our way back to Dandasana. Sitting up straight, sitting up all the way. Good. Now we will bring the bottoms of the feet together. So bend the knees. Let the knees come wide like butterfly legs. There's a couple different dials you can play with in this pose as well. You can bring your hips close to your feet, and that'll give you more of an inner thigh stretch. You can also bring your hips further away from your feet and get more of an outer hip stretch. So from wherever you choose to be, we'll use an inhale to lift the crown towards the heavens, towards the sky, create length in the back, and then exhale, fold forward. And while we're here, we can show some appreciation to our feet. You don't have to touch your feet if you don't want to, but just have a moment of appreciation for all that your feet do for you in your day-to-day, carrying you around from here to there. Keep using your breath as your guide. It'll help tell you what intensity level is right for you. Listen to your body to know which version of the stretch is right for you. Good. Use an inhale to come back up to a seat. And we'll try Gomukhasana. So I'm going to face you. We've got one knee bent. I don't know if you can see, we've got one knee bent here, and then we'll fold the other knee on top of it. You can sit on a block. That can help create space between the hips and the low back if that's feeling tight. You'll most likely feel an outer hip stretch. So if this is just way too much, then find a block or maybe try one leg at a time. You can try one leg straight, one leg bent. We're using our inhales like we know to do to lift through the crown of the head. And then you can play here with maybe folding forward. Make sure that your sit bones stay on the mat. You can also play with how close or far apart your feet are from your hips. You can walk your feet out. That'll intensify the stretch. So be very, very gentle. And breathe. So if you're folded, invite your torso back up to a tall seat. And there's several ways to come out of Gomukhasana. You can use your hands behind your hips, lift up out of your hips, and then curl to one side, come out that way. You can also walk your hands forward and come into a table. So uncross your feet that way. Lots of options for coming out of it. We'll spend a few breaths just moving the knees side to side, taking any organic movement. That was quite a hip stretch. So we'll take several breaths, countering that in any way that would feel good for you. And when you're ready, we'll take the other side. The trick is to remember which side did I start with. I think I started with my right knee bent. So we'll take the opposite side, then the opposite leg under, then the remaining leg on top. So we've hopefully switched sides. One hip might feel very different from the other, and that's all right. And see if you can find the balance between giving and receiving in this pose, if you can stay connected with those inhales and those exhales. A couple more breaths here. Good. We'll use an inhale to raise your torso back up to a seat. You can place the hands behind you, maybe scoot the hips back to come out of this, or come forward through table. You find your way out of that posture. And again, move the knees side to side. And eventually we'll make our way next onto our backs. So knees pointed towards the sky, back of the head flat on the mat, feet flat on the mat. Bring your heels in pretty close to your sit bones so that your fingertips could graze the backs of your heels. And then we'll use the inhale to raise the hips. Keep the knees pulling towards one another. Relax your glutes. And if you have a block, it can be really nice to put a block underneath your tailbone. Make sure it's under your tailbone, not your low back. So this can help you relax your muscles. And we're doing an inversion here, right? The head is below the heart. If you don't have a block, you can do a moving bridge. You can hold bridge for several breaths. The idea is to open up the front of the body, the hip flexors. So if you've got your tailbone on a block, it might feel nice to extend one leg long at a time. Stretching that psoas muscle. It's an important muscle that doesn't get a lot of love when we're sitting most of the day. If you've extended one leg long, go ahead and bend the knee, extend the opposite leg. Notice how one side of the body might be the same or different as the first. Reconnect with your breath. If it feels all right on your low back, you might extend both legs down the mat. And I'll give you a preview. Where we're headed next is Shavasana. So if you've got your legs extended and your low back lifted or your tailbone lifted on a block, you can take Shavasana like this. That can be kind of nice. Or you can ease your way out of it and choose a variation without a block. You could bend both knees, gently raise the hips. And then if you've had yourself in bridge, spend a couple breaths moving the hips up and down. So don't go just flat on your back. Lower one vertebrae at a time. And then inhale, lift the hips back up. It's a big movement on that low back. So we're just taking several breaths to reset, to calibrate. And then finally let your tailbone land on the mat. Good, and then choose Shavasana however you want to take it, with your knees bent, maybe with your legs long down the mat. We'll be here for just a minute or two to take stock of the changes that have happened in your body and your mind during this practice. Notice what's happened with your breath. So as we enter Shavasana, let's take one full round of breath together, inhaling. Pause at the top, and then exhale, sigh it out. And rest. So if your mind has wandered, that's all right. That's what it does. Invite it back into the room. Bring your awareness into your body and your breath. Find some nice inhales and exhales. Invite small movements into your fingers, your toes. You might move your nose side to side, shake your head as if you're saying no. You can make circles with your wrists and ankles. I like to warm up my legs by shifting my feet side to side like my toes are windshield wipers. If it would feel good, you can take a full body stretch, extend the arms overhead, bring the feet together down the mat. Stretch everything out. Get nice and long and then release. Bend one knee at a time, bring the knees in toward the chest. Wrap the arms around the knees, give yourself a hug. Acknowledge the space that you've created for yourself by practicing. And then choose your favorite side, roll onto your favorite side. You can use your arm as a pillow. We'll spend a breath here. You've just moved out of corpse pose. We're in fetal pose. It's an expression of rebirth, of being a new version of yourself. And when you're ready, use an in-breath to push yourself up to a seat. Take all the time you need to get there. And once you're seated, find a comfortable place to rest your legs. Find your sit bones on the mat. Take a moment to get used to being upright again. Find your breath. Notice what happens when you appreciate all that you are, all that you have, when you are not coveting when you're practicing Asteya or non-stealing, the generosity, and the goodness that comes with being in balance with giving and receiving. So together we'll take a breath. We'll start by emptying out all the air. We'll inhale, filling up the body. Hold it at the top. And exhale, release. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you got something out of this practice, and I hope to practice with you again soon. Bye.